Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Malicious Compliance. In today's episode, owner refused to let me do jury duty. Don't think a 17-year-old girl crying at the counter is a good look for your company. I was nice to my awful grandma. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Owner refused to let me do jury duty. This was back in the 80s, my first job, working as maintenance man at a local hotel. I'd been working there part-time since I was 16, and when I turned 18, I got a notice to attend jury duty. I picked a week and I let my boss know. The owner of the hotel found out. He was always a completely unreasonable jerk to all the employees, and sees me in the hallway and tells me that I need to do whatever it takes to get out of jury duty because he needs me at the hotel that week for a large dog show, clogged drains, etc., and if I'm not at work, I'm fired. When I get to jury duty, day 1, I get selected to a week-long trial, and the judge asks jurors if there's any reason we cannot serve on the jury. They go around. When they get to me, I'm nervous, never been in court before and too scared to lie. I tell the judge that the owner of the business I work at will fire me if I'm not back today, and said I needed to do everything I can to get out of jury duty or I'm fired. Other than that, I'm fine serving. The judge looks pissed. The judge has me approach the bench, asks for the name of the owner, location, etc. Then he hands the court officer a paper and says something to the officer. The judge still looks pissed. I'm told to return to the jury box. About an hour later, still selecting a jury, the officer returns with the owner, visibly shaken, in handcuffs, and walked to the front of the judge's bench. The owner is standing in front of the judge. The judge asks him questions which he apologetically tries to worm out of. Then the judge, looking even more pissed, instructs him that I will be here for jury duty, I will serve as long as I need to, and he should not do anything to retaliate against me, and that the judge is filing charges and will be instructing the clerk to check with me regularly, and if, for any reason, I am fired or face any disciplinary action at work, he will hold the owner in contempt, violation of a court order, etc., a bunch of legal stuff, and he will spend time behind bars thinking about how important jury duty is. Then the judge makes him apologize to me in court. I made it onto the jury and I served the week. I reported back to work the following week. I expected some blowback, but I never got fired, none of my shifts were changed, and I got paid for my time in jury. I didn't ask why I got paid. The clerk did check back a few times, and I was told to call the judge's clerk direct phone number if anything happened. It was awesome. I was pretty much bulletproof and worked until I saved enough to go back to school. This kind of shit pisses off judges in a big way. Do not piss off a judge. It will not go well for you. Oddly enough, this is true outside the courtroom. My dad occasionally tries to hold my children in contempt of court during dinner. But they just laugh at him. This happened where I live. Some exec fired a woman for going to jury duty because it was important that the employee stay at work to produce some press release for the company. When the lady went to jury duty and was visibly upset, the judge got the story and sent county deputies who dragged that exec out of the office in handcuffs. The exec got a good lesson in civics. The lady got her job back, but I think she declined and got another job pretty quickly. It's good that she got another job, because if she had stayed, then she'd be walking on eggshells for a long time, or at least won't get promoted as long as her executive is around. Was called to jury duty a few years ago. One poor guy also in the pool worked nights, he couldn't afford to take off. Judge saw him having a hard time staying awake, asked him a few questions, and excused from jury duty. The judge called down to the jury room and told the clerk that this jury member had served his week and was marked excused. I enjoyed watching this judge in action. She was firm but kind when needed. The last time I got called into jury duty, I worked in a legal office. I happened to get called into the courthouse just a mile from the office, and actually got put into a pool for a murder trial. Before anything interesting happened, I was chatting with an older woman who was a lawyer herself and knew my boss. She's the one who said I should make sure to name him, as apparently, he had a bit of a reputation in the courthouse. When the judge asked for reasons why we couldn't serve, the woman next to me said she was a lawyer herself and was immediately excused. They came to me, and I said I work in a legal office, that my boss didn't pay for jury duty, and when they asked where, I told them. The judge nodded, then smiled. I know him. He's a cheap son of a gun. Excused. You did the right thing. Business owners have to realize sooner or later that it is illegal to do what your boss did. Good on ya. My HR has an immense respect for civic service, so it's automatically paid, no hassle. I think they'd at least ask me to try to explain that I'm mission critical, they don't have a replacement right now, and my boss doesn't know enough yet to be a backup. I just called my father, who was a retired judge, read this to him, and he said the judge in the story went overboard and may have overstepped his authority. Dad also laughed so hard at your story he cried. I reminded my dad of the time a lawyer claimed he wasn't ready for trial on the day the trial was scheduled. When the lawyer refused to proceed, Dad held him in contempt of court and had him taken into custody, and the lawyer went to jail for the night. So Opie's story isn't so out of the realm of judicial power, depending on where you live. Also, I can confirm that this judge will be telling this story decades later, as will his family members. I tell my dad's best stories. I love when bad business owners and bosses tell you that you won't be serving jury duty. No, dingus, I'm legally compelled to appear in court when summoned there. I'm not getting arrested and charged just to pull some extra shifts for you. See you once it's over. It's actually illegal to retaliatorily fire an employee for serving jury duty. I was a courtroom clerk for 20+ years, and now I'm a judge's admin for 5 judges in chambers. Lots of people would say they couldn't serve because of work, but that was mainly to get out of jury service. When they were pressed, they actually weren't being threatened by any supervisors or owners. I absolutely adore my job now, and I love my judges. But man, do I miss the courtroom? Don't think a 17-year-old girl crying at the counter is a good look for your company. Minor TW, brief mention of drugs and death. Background: back in high school, I worked for a bakery that's popular in my area. Overall, it was a really good job. I liked the people I worked with, I loved baking, and the food was great, a really good gig for a high school job. My bosses, though, they were hit or miss. They simultaneously tried to be our friend and boss, and randomly would be total AHs, with no heads up. But for the most part, they didn't bother me too much and I made do. One night my senior year, one of my best friends owed and passed away. I was, of course, inconsolable. The next day I had a shift. I called my boss to let them know I couldn't go in, but it was a day he decided to stick to his guns and be a jerk, telling me I had to come in. No one could cover, even after I explained what was happening. Why didn't I quit? I should've, but I was in shock and a kid, and it honestly didn't even enter my mind. I went the other way instead. Said fine, I'll be there, just as I am. So you can imagine how awkward it was for customers to come up to the counter at their local bakery, to see a young woman with tears streaming down her face trying to ring them up, snotty-nosed and hiccuping through the interaction. Thankfully my shift supervisor actually had a heart and sent me home and changed my schedule for a few days. It's minor MC, and while horrible at the time, it makes me laugh now. I'll never forget having to finish a restaurant shift after hearing that one of my favorite coworkers was found alone in his house after a heart attack. I was snotty wailing. I was told to get it together even though I was BOH. I hated that manager. I had a boss once who had managed a pet store some years before I worked for her, warehouse work for men's clothing. I had to have my pet rat euthanized over the preceding weekend and was still quite upset. She asked if I was okay. I told her I'd had to have Templeton euthanized, and her immediate reaction was to ask if I needed a couple of days bereavement leave. Kinda miss that boss. Nobody likes Mark. I'm sorry that happens to you and your coworker. My parents came into the cafe I worked at 18 to tell me my dog, 16 years old, had to be put down ASAP. They organized for me to have a break to say goodbye / be there while she passed. Boss insisted I had to come back after, we're short-staffed. I was sobbing serving people, trying to make coffees and begging for the rest of the day off when boss loudly stated it was just a dog. Several people got up and left after giving me their condolences. One of them, a regular, made a comment on the way out about how there doesn't seem to be many people to serve now. Boss still didn't get the hint. I'm sorry for laughing at you in my imaginary world, a crying shop assistant, just standing there sobbing and imagining all the customer coming in just to feel awkward when trying to finalize the purchase. Also, it's a bakery, usually kind of warm with a fresh baked bread smell, like the contrast would feel too weird lol. Sorry for your loss. Exactly. Such opposite vibes were happening. It's okay, it was a while ago, and honestly, I could see my friend laughing at this story too. But thank you. In a prior life, I taught math on the weekend to a handful of students from elementary to middle. I had a fever and told my boss, who told me I had to find a sub. I knew only one other person and she was leaving the state entirely for another career. Not sure what to do, I went to work and had to keep my head down every so and then. Students told their parents I was ill and they complained, but my boss couldn't give me shit because he told me to come in. Looking back, he probably thought I was trying to get the day off. Still worked for him years after, and he never questioned when I wanted days off after that. I hope you ended up quitting that job without notice. I was nice to my awful grandma. This happened when I was 16, I'm now 33. My dad's parents and I never got along. She thought I should be a homemaker and I preferred to be out with the men hunting, fixing cars, riding horses, etc. Luckily they lived in Ohio and we lived in Wisconsin, so I rarely had to see them. I was working on a dairy farm, and if you've ever been to one, you know it has a very ripe manure smell. My mom had threatened to not let me go to a horse show the next week if I wasn't nice to her in-laws. She agreed they were awful though. I had to work the morning they were supposed to arrive, so I rubbed against every stinky, gross cow. After that, I volunteered to clean the 20 calf hutches. Calf hutches were the worst because they smell like spoiled milk, rotten eggs, poo and cows. I got as nasty as I could before I came home. By the time I got there, they had arrived and the whole family was chatting on the back porch. I plastered a smile on my face and said "Grandma," and went in for a hug. She stepped back with a horrified look on her face, looked me up and down and coldly said, "Go sanitize yourself." Normally, I would have showered and eaten breakfast, but not that day. I went inside, washed my hands, and calmly ate the most delicious revenge waffles I had ever tasted. To this day, my mom loves telling this story. She couldn't be mad at me because I was nice to my grandma, just like she told me to be. Revenge is a dish best served fragrant. With revenge waffles. Good job. I worked in the stables at a dude ranch one summer. Despite half the job being cleaning the stalls, I loved being around the horses and the other work. I was spending the summer living at my aunt's house. After the third day, she'd meet my cousin and I outside and hosed us down, clothes and all, before letting us in the house. The other crew could see it happening as they left for the day. My aunt's house right across the road from the ranch. They tried giving us shit for it, we just laughed and said it felt so good they should try it. By the end of summer, everybody admitted to taking a hose-down shower before going into their houses. My cousin also worked at the ranch, but his job was to ride the trails early in the day to make sure there were no hazards like fallen trees, animals, coyotes, raccoons, etc. No bobcats, cougars or wolves in our area, and clear them. The old women should be homemakers trope is honestly so dated. In a world where both partners have to work full-time just to survive, men need to pitch in on the housework and women need to learn to do basic maintenance on their own vehicles and help take care of the yard too. There's other things as well, but the whole hard set gender roles thing doesn't mesh with the world we live in today. Hey Grandma, I wanted to help. Do I unpacked and folded all your clothes? Hon? What smell? If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.